You're listening to Getting It Wrong to Get It Right. Are you struggling to grow your business? Book a free business growth consultation with Joe today. In this consultation, you'll receive professional advice, step-by-step guidance that will help you achieve success. Best practices and tips for improving profits. Clicking on the link in the description or contacting us directly.
Claudio, welcome to Breakthrough Brands, Getting It Wrong to Get It Right. How are you?
How you doing, Joe? Very nice being here with you this morning or your afternoon.
Yes, thank God for technology. It was funny, I was just seeing a post on LinkedIn. There was someone put it up online saying cash machines are down, but we are taking cash. And I wrote on the post going, despite all the technology in the world, cash is still king. Because if the internet goes down, if the power goes down, or you have technical errors, a company can't trade. I thought it was quite fitting for inviting you on today as well, because, cash is king when it comes to an organization. And for yourself, you help companies really evaluate what they have, how much cash they can get for their company. Yeah. How they can possibly sail off into the distance with a badge of honor for the years and the decades of work that they've put in to achieve what they've achieved. Would that sum up what a business broker is?
Yeah, that's true. And that's what I like about it. I love working with business owners after they built their companies and they're created their legacy and they built something new for society, and now they want to retire. So it's great. Not all of them want to retire, though. Most of them don't retire. They do something else. They, when you're an entrepreneur, it's really hard to just go to the beach and drink margaritas all day. That's sometimes the fantasy, but it doesn't happen. They end up doing more stuff always.
Do we ever retire? That's the reality.
No.
People
who are driven, they never retire.
No, like even like I'm on my holidays this week, and my wife, my wife says, we have to get you away from the house because you're always just dipping into stuff. But look, for yourself, you're a business broker, so you specialize within the building industry. So in roofing within the building industry. But life for you was not always like that. If you look at, going back to your history, you were with Johnson & Johnson, which is far from roofing.
Yes. Isn't it funny how life, takes you to places you never thought you'd be? I was with J&J for over 20 years, and I did everything you can possibly do in a company. I couldn't hold a job. So they would move me from one thing to another. So I started out in sales, then I did marketing, I did IT. Believe it or not, I was a director of IT for a while. I was director of supply chain, channel management. Well, you name it, I was there at one time in my career, over 20 some careers. And not only, J&J is a huge company. So you have more than one company within J&J. I worked in two of them. One is Ethicon, the other one was Cordis. So, very interesting, very interesting.
But what you learned and what you did was such, was helping you in your career today, because all those different jobs of all those different industries that we've been in, we bring them to the companies that we're helping. Like for myself, I was in retail, I was in the motor trade, I was in tech, I was in fitness. I was in, even at the age of, I think it was 17, when you had those summer jobs, I was a bus conductor. So I was on the bus collecting fares, and I learned more about human connection and people that I'm working on a bus collecting fares off people than anywhere in my life. It's amazing those small things add value to us later on in life. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree. Well, if you think about it, business is about people. Business is about, what is a business? It's an organization, a group of people that they get together to produce or a product or to give a service and, give it back to society. So, we can have all the technology you want, you can have all the AI you want, but at the end of the day, it's about the people that run that business, number one. Number two, it doesn't matter what industry you are, it doesn't matter where, in the world you are. At the end of the day, it's also about efficiency and making that product as efficiently as possible, right? So, industries are, of course, each industry can have its own nuances, but the core is pretty much the same everywhere. So whatever you're learning in one place, you can actually implement in another. And actually, if you think about it, most breakthroughs in industries come from people who are not in that industry, who came, parachuting from somewhere else, and they come to the industry and they say, "Oh, wait a minute, I did this in my past, and that's not happening here. I'm going to do it here." And that's where you get innovation coming, because they have a different view. Okay,
I think you're spot on, because cross-referencing from different industries, bringing that in offers a new perspective, because everyone in that industry are ticking the boxes of what works in that industry, and they don't have time or the willingness to look outside the industry to actually come in. And that's where I think with ourselves, we actually can go and go, "Oh, have you thought of this?" And they go, "My God, I didn't." And you go, "Well, that's just obvious to me, but to them, it's a great idea."
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's important to have a diverse background and having been in different places. Again, young people, they have all the stamina, if you will, and all the energy. But older people bring experience. If you define experience the way it should be defined, because some people just like to do the same thing over and over again. But if you use what you learn to actually implement somewhere else, it's not bad. It's not. So it's between young people and older people. I think it's a balance that you got to work on.
When you say those words, older people, I'm still young. I think
I'm going to be 59 next week, and I can't believe I'm 59, because I don't feel any minute over, I don't know, 35, 40. I could do any. But you do bring experience. I mean, life takes you to places, like I said before, you never thought you would be, and you learn. But you got to be open to learning. Not everybody does. Okay, so just because you've lived a few things doesn't mean that you learned a few others.
Yeah, it's life experience. But you mentioned something there about AI, and I have to totally agree with you. Everyone is sort of jumping on the AI bandwagon, but people are forgetting that AI is only machine learning, and it can't distinguish between truth and fiction. And really what people use is connecting with other people. People buy from people. We have technology to make things easier for ourselves, but at the end of the day, it's trust, rapport, it's value, it's the connection, it's the conversation. It's all these things that matter internally and externally to make a company great as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The same thing goes for social media. I believe social media is just a really good way to extend your networking. I do a lot of networking through you and I met through social media, and it's not about the machine; it's about the people, and those are tools that help us be more connected if you use it that way, right? But you got to learn how to use it that way. You got to learn how to, use your. I use a lot of Facebook, for example, and I look at the people that I want to be connected with, and I reach out to them. It's just like as if I were in a, I don't know, in a cocktail party, and want to meet somebody, and I'll walk up to them and talk to them. Well, the same thing has to be done in social media, right? Of course it's different, but it, if you use it that way, it's a way to bring people together. Because you and I are in completely different continents right now, and we're having this conversation thanks to, number one, social media. That's how we met. Number two, technology. That's how we're having this conversation.
Yeah, it's the likes of LinkedIn. I say to people, when you connect with someone, you have to visualize that you're meeting them in a network meeting. And when you connect, you're saying hello and you're shaking their hand. when they connect back with you, you go, look, thanks for connecting. And that's the acknowledgement. And then you're asking them something to interest about themselves. And then you want to find out more about them and so on. It's not about going, hi, connect. Hey, do you want to buy 50 suits from me?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Hey, an email. The next message is something 50, 500 words, and you go, oh my God,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it's all about it's tactical. It really is strategy and tactical. But with getting back into business, I always say there's different elements. So you need to have systems, processes, behaviors, and they have to have measurement as well. You went always in the construction business as a broker. What made you meander into that, and how did you fit into it? Like I see it on social, it's like it's a glove for you, and it's bringing you,
Well, I started as a business broker about 5 years ago, and I wanted to just sell businesses. And I'm very much in love with any kind of small business. And I did. I sold everything for a long time. But at the second year in my career, I realized that I was going to be a lot more effective if I actually was focusing in on one industry. There's a lot of advantages of focusing in one industry for me as a broker and for my clients. And I'll go over them in a minute. But I didn't know exactly what to focus on. Actually, my first idea was medical devices because I've been in medical devices most of my life. And I know a lot of people in medical devices, and I could have done a great, job or business doing that. But I never had the opportunity. Believe it or not, I only had one medical device distributor to sell. A guy that was a friend of mine from J&J, and he put a distributorship for Latin America, and he hired me to sell his business. And unfortunately, as a month or two into looking to sell his business, he passed away, and that was the only time I actually had a business to sell related to what I did in the past. So I had other companies. Then I met a guy that he's really good, and he's in LinkedIn too. His name is Patrick Lanch, and he focuses only in HVAC. So again, I reached out to him and said, "Hey, I know that you're focusing on HVAC. Tell me what's your experience? Why are you doing it? How are you successful?" And really nice person. He called me. We had conversations, and he taught me what he was doing in HVAC. And I said, okay, fine. I'll find something similar to yours. And he says, well, blue collar industries are really good for that. There's a lot of money coming in. There's a lot of investors looking for it. So as I was doing this, I met the first owner of roofing companies that I sold. And well, I sold this company. We became good friends, and he started introducing me to people in the industry. And I said, well, this is it. This is what I'm focusing in on. So I took all my other listings. I moved them to other brokers because I think that once you focus on something, you focus on something. So I started not taking anything and focusing on it. And that made the world of difference.
A couple of things are springing up in my mind. One is clarity. Once you have clarity, I don't care what people would say, but something in the ether changes when you have clarity. Is that divine intervention that you have a direction that you want to go on? The other one as well is, business broking and selling business is a nice soft tone, because when you say M&A, people are scared when they hear those letters, and they think, TV, corporate lawyers, and the New York style, and they kind of go, they back off from it, and it's it's a lot easier than what you believe it to be. So, what are the elements that you feel are really that you bring to the table, which helps a company have a smooth transaction from, say, either selling a company or buying a company?
Okay, well, I had a very, like I said before, diverse background. I learned a lot at J&J. J&J is one of the companies that I admire. I still admire them today. They taught me a lot. I was able to do college courses. I was able to do, lots of training that I would have never done because I wouldn't even know that it existed if I was an entrepreneur. And, if you're an entrepreneur, you're pretty much on your own, and whatever you find is what you do. I was fortunately, I was forced to do a lot of things I didn't want to do at the time, but I learned, right? and and that actually allowed me to have the corporate language, if you will, right? So I can speak the language that a private equity will bring, and they will, use. On the other hand, because I was an entrepreneur before J&J and after J&J, because my life didn't start and finish with J&J. I was an entrepreneur before and after. I know the other side as well. So I bring a good balance between a business owner that has knowledge about his business, but not necessarily about finance and all the scary, acronyms that you can find when you're dealing with M&A, and the people who are buying those companies who have that language, but they don't understand that business. So I think the best thing I can do is to balance that playing field, because remember, if you're a business owner and you want to sell your business, you're probably going to sell your business once or twice in your life, unless you're a serial entrepreneur or whatever. But the buyers are buying businesses for a living. So your situation against them is really a big disadvantage, right? And what I try to do is to balance that advantage. Unfortunately, when I meet the companies to sell, I meet them at the end of their life cycle, right? Because they're selling. I wish I could meet them a few years before, because every time I do the analysis to sell the companies, 100% of the time I start discovering things that they should have known before, because they're not looking at it, right? So
Yeah, it's like an engineer, a business owner, a founder of say an SME who's a great engineer and knows how to produce an amazing product, mightn't have the time or the knowledge for all the other elements that make a business, successful for sale.
mhm.
And one of those things as well is understanding the different components of each department, and also having the ability of those negotiation skills as well. But I'm just going to come back to one thing. I want to ask you, what should a company have in place, or know what they should have in place to make them attractive to a buyer?
Oh, good, really good question. Most business owners are focused mostly on the shiny object, if you will, of marketing, sales, and the day-to-day running, but they don't focus on the core of the business, which is actually how much money you make. My conversations with business owners is always pretty much the same. Oh, what are you doing with the company? Oh, we're doing this, we're doing that. This is great. Blah, blah. Well, how much money are you making? Well, I don't know. I got to ask my accountant. It's, let me see. I have a business right now for sale. It's 2024. It's July 2024. I still don't have 2023 financials. And the guy lives well. He's making money, but he doesn't know how much money he's making. He's using his accountant just to make sure that he pays as little taxes as possible, and that financial, that's actually the core of the business. The problem is that it's, underneath all the other layers of the business. It's the end, right? How much money you make. And when a buyer comes to buy a business, the first question he asks is, how much money do you make? So, the seller looks at a business. Let's suppose you have a triangle, from the top to the bottom. The buyer will buy it exactly the opposite way. How much money do you make, and how do you make that money? Okay, so that's a key thing, to make sure that you know your financials. The other thing is many other questions, like, for example, processes and procedures, making sure that the business is transferable. Okay, you should not be the business. The business should run on its own. When you're not here, if you're going to on vacation to, I don't know, Kathmandu, your business should continue to run smoothly. Your middle management has to be trained and empowered to manage the business. Like I said, SOPs, very important, very, very important. And unfortunately, because of, if you think about it, an entrepreneur has a certain type A personality that we want to control everything. And I include myself in that. And I try to change that. But, you want to control everything and you feel good that you know everything about the business. But the buyer is not buying you, is buying the business. So when we go to the due diligence part and with the quality of earnings analysis, that's when we start discovering things. And that's what I said before. That's when you start discovering things that if the owner had known a year or two ago, he probably would have made a lot more money, or maybe 5 or 10 years ago. So I don't know. I'm just thinking about this, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to do a due diligence on your own company way before you sell the business.
Yeah, it's about doing a 360, helicopter view on an organization, and companies only look for the hill. They don't look over the hill, and the administration just look forward. And one of the things that, which I try and say to companies, is said, look, you need to have, like, call it a playbook for each department. So if someone leaves, you just hand this person, this book and go, follow this procedure, and everything flows, in all the different departments. But you also need to have something that when a buyer comes in, they go, well, what's this company about? I see four walls and I see people. Well, what is the procedures here? And you go, well, here's a procedure for processing. Here's for sales. Here's for marketing. Here's accounts. Here's everything. That adds value already to the company in the due diligence process. But one of the other things as well, and I would agree with you, is that you say to a company, for me, is, have you thought of exiting in the next 3 to 5 years? Because if you spend 3 to 5 years building up the revenue, the company comes more valuable. And I think, sometimes companies go, I want to sell next year. Hang on. Let's see if we can double it, the value, by putting the work in within 3 years.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes it's just minor changes that are going to change profoundly how the company works, right? So, start paying attention to exactly what you're saying. Remember, this is a business. It's not about you. It's not your job. It's your business. And many, many people don't see it that way, right?
What, if you were to pick one thing, what is the one thing that you see congruent to a lot of organizations that always need to be tweaked or fixed?
Well, 99% of the time is about delegating and empowering your middle management. Because if you do that, then everything else becomes a lot more easier and flows better. What your middle management should do once they are empowered is actually work on the processes. Okay, so they themselves become, replaceable. And it's hard to tell somebody, hey, I want you to work so you become replaceable. But the people who are actually leaders, and that's the people you should focus on, are going to want to become themselves replaceable because they will have a higher opportunity, right? If I work as a sales rep and I become replaceable as a sales rep, I can become a manager because now I'm going to hire people that are going to do my job. When I become a manager and then work on replacing myself, I can become a director, and so forth and so forth. It's very hard because it goes against everything everybody typically thinks. It's like, oh, I want to hold my job, and I'm concerned that what's going to happen to me. But if you could get a culture, and by the way, it's all about culture as well. I'm working right now on a deal that you should. I wish I could, show the world this company because the culture of the company is just amazing, and I'm selling it. They're getting a lot more money than they would have gotten if it was just a company. The reason for that is because everybody there not only does their job, but they're passionate about their job. They're looking for ways to improve it, and that comes from the top. That comes from the leadership. Your job as a business owner is not to, I don't know, not to do the accounting. It's to be the leader and inspire people to make your company grow.
Yeah, it's community. As I do say to people, there's 24 hours in a day, and you sleep 8 of them. And out of the rest, what's left, you spend 8 of them in work on a daily basis. So you're probably being awake, spending more time with your work colleagues than you are with your family or people within your neighborhood. And that's a community. And when you embrace it and see as a community and people actually then get on with each other and respect each other and learn that they are moving as one within a company to make it better for themselves, then that company has a great culture and it thrives. And I think people need to just take a step back and realize it's not, oh, she did this and I did that and, giving out at the water cooler, but actually kind of go, okay, how can we not be excellent at what we do? How can we be better? How can we be better at what we do? Yeah.
Well, one thing that I heard, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, somebody said something very simple. It says, well, if you can make one small change a week in your business, by the end of the year, you will have made 52 changes. So, it's not about big changes or anything, just minor things that you can tweak and you can improve. And, that mindset of constantly improving and constantly asking yourself, why am I doing this? Right. Again, I understand that, most people are, interested in getting a salary and, going back home and everything. But when you can inspire people to actually do things better because they are recognized for it, because they are incentivized for it, because they think they have that company culture that you're kind of part owner and you're part of something bigger, you can create great companies.
Here's a question I have for you. How does a company even acknowledge that they want to be sold?
That's a good question. And most business owners, again, they get to me when they want to just retire, right? And he gets tired, or she, they're just don't finding appealing anymore to continue with the company. It's most of the time is that, which is a shame. I did a presentation once where I showed, the life cycle of a business and when you should sell your business versus when you do sell your business. You should sell your business when it's at the peak, not when it's coming down. And it has to do with human nature. We tend to believe that trends will continue. And actually, I'm working on a presentation on all this, how to use human nature to sell your business for more money. Basically, think about this. When you look at a trend and you see it going up, instinctively, you believe it's going to continue to go up. You as a seller or business owner and the buyer as well. Now, if you as a seller, business owner, start noticing that you're starting to get tired, that it's not as interesting to go to the company anymore, you're starting to see the first signs that trend is not going to continue. And you need to have a good understanding of yourself, okay? And say, hey, you know what? I'm getting tired. This is, I'd rather sell now. Why should I sell now? Because the business has been growing, I don't know, for the last 3 years. Any buyer that comes in will see that trend and will, in his mind, see it continuing, okay? And it probably would if it's bought today. But if you stay there, your mind is going to start coming away from the business and the business is going to start going down. What happens is people wait too long and then they sell it after 2 or 3 years that revenues have been coming down. And guess what? Yeah. The buyer is going to look at that trend, is going to say, I don't want to buy this business. So, timing in business sales has to do with the mind of the seller, and you have to work against your own paradigm, if you will, that you think is going to continue to grow.
Oh yeah, it's when a company is in flow and generating a good income, it's in that sweet spot zone.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the time that they kind of need to look at and go, hey, what can we get here? what we look at as also is looking at companies that have great IPs. And there's some organizations out there have a great IP, but need investment. And what we try and do is we try and match them up with some equity from, say, an investor. We'll take a percentage of that equity. And then that equity goes into the company to build it up to a place where it gets ready for a sale, and then they can exit out of it as well, or exit out as in sell their IP to a bigger company. And we're finding that, there's a lot of companies out there that have great IPs, but they're missing the business part. And if they don't act now, say if a company's making $1 million a year, and they should be making $5 million a year, and their IP could be sold for $10 million. And if they don't sell it within the next 12 months, it'll be worth nothing.
Nothing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. IP and technology companies are a little different than blue collar in that sense, because you're selling, when you're selling a good IP, you're actually selling the future. What I typically sell is the past, the past revenues and all the way up until today. But when you're selling the next Facebook, for example, when people buy it, you have a different type of buyer. You have a venture capitalist that's going to come in and put money to make the company grow. It's a different business model because one of them is focusing on the future. The other one is mostly focusing on the today and how I keep that and then make it grow slowly or slower than, a tech company.
Yeah, well, one is tangible,
Yes.
So I think it's definitely all businesses with the right workflow and the amount of people and a product or a service and IP have value. And it's recognizing that value on it. I'm going to ask you, what did you get wrong to get right?
Whoa, that's a really good question. I'm going to try to answer it as honestly as possible. I got wrong that I thought that because I was with J&J, I knew everything, and I was the, greatest and most knowledgeable guy in the world. And after I left J&J, I started business on my own. I became a business owner. I bought laundromats. I bought up to 5 laundromats, and I thought I was the hot shot. And I realized a couple of years into that game that I wasn't such a smart guy, and I made huge mistakes just because I didn't understand the entrepreneurial side. Okay, so I bit off more than I could chew, and I got into debt. And for some twists to the market, I ended up losing some of those investments. I still have laundromats, and laundromat is the easiest business you can find. Okay, and I made a huge mistake there. So that humbled me. That taught me that you should always be on your toes. And it was probably the biggest life lesson that I had. Now, the good thing about that is we came out of that and I learned not only about myself, but about small businesses. One of the things that now I'm working on lower middle market, if you will. But, those people who buy small businesses, those businesses have some hidden risks that you don't know until you find that it was a risk. So I used to take a lot of time explaining to people what my mistakes were and how much they cost me, and that helped some people, make different decisions when they were buying businesses. The problem with risk is you don't know what you don't know, and I didn't know what I didn't know, which hurt me financially, right? When you're an employee and you make a mistake, the worst thing that can happen is that you get fired. When you're a business owner and you make a mistake, you can lose your shirt. And I didn't realize that, and I got into too much risk. So my advice to anybody that goes into business is make sure you understand the cash flow of the business. By the way, cash flow is a word that not many people use as well as they should. Cash flow is not the same as income, it's not the same as EBITDA, it's cash flow. And cash flow is what kills businesses. because you might be making money, but you're not getting it on time, and then your your debts start mounting up, and interests are very high. I'm working with about 3 companies where that's the problem. They have a very big debt, and they can't afford to pay it off, even though the business is making some money and the business is not, losing money, but they are biting off more than they can chew. So that was my
Yeah,
biggest learning.
you know, uh, when companies come to me and they go, "What's the best advice?" I said, "Spend wisely." Is really what it
Exactly.
is. Yeah. Spend wisely, and I think business. When you get into business, become an entrepreneur, a business owner. I use the analogy of someone saying, "Oh, I want to retire and I want to own a little bread and breakfast somewhere or a restaurant." And I said to him, what you're doing is you're visualizing the romantic part of a B&B or a restaurant. I said, but behind it, it's crazy. You're dealing with people. You're trying to serve food. You're trying to do everything. You're actually the romantic part of running a B&B or a restaurant or any business. You're delusional. The reality of it is chaotic until you understand the flow of it. And,
Yes.
I think that's with a lot of people, they have to kind of take a step back sometimes and go, do you know what? If my business is having a problem, maybe it's me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's me.
Mm-hmm.
But acknowledging that it's me actually
Yes.
starts to fix it.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. The As a business owner, you're very lonely. It's a very lonely situation. You don't have anybody to rely on, and you need to be very resilient. You need to be, emotionally intelligent. You need to know yourself. To your point, a problem in your business is actually 99% of the time because of you, and you have to acknowledge that. Be humble. Find support groups, which could be your friends, your family, your colleagues, other business owners, organizations. I belong to a support group. It's not a support group. It's an entrepreneur group. It's called Leading Peers, and I meet once a month with a group of other 8 business owners, and we discuss things there that are, it stays there. We all sign an NDA, and we all share things that we can't share with anybody else because nobody else will understand it, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, it's, what's coming up, a company, first you need to have forgiveness, and that's for yourself. And the other thing is you have to let go of the shame and the guilt. And understand that it's a journey, and understand that it's meant to be fun. And if and you're talking about emotional intelligence, people would say you take emotions out of business. And I used to believe that. And I say, no, you take the lower levels, fear, doubt, anxiety, all those emotions, because they're all cluttered together. If you feel guilty, you have shame, or if you feel fear, you have anxiety, they're all clumped together. You take them out of your business and you only focus on the higher levels, and that's love, joy, happiness, fulfillment.
Yes.
And if you focus on them and kind of go, in 100 years I'll be dead. Nobody'll even know who I am. And,
exactly.
And the biggest thing is courage. Courage.
Yes.
That's it on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're making decisions. I'm sorry, you're making decisions sometimes that nobody else will agree with you, and you have to take it. And if you really believe in that, you have to have the courage to do it, right? So, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
That's what leadership is all about. Leadership is not about everybody likes you. Is creating a path where nobody's gone through. So if you're creating a path, it's really hard to make all the right decisions, but you have to have the courage to take those decisions, and it's a risk. And I don't know any entrepreneur that is successful who hasn't failed at least once, and sometimes failed miserably.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to fail either.
No, it's kind of going, okay, I have failed. I've learned from it. and you learn more from them. And it's funny when years later, when you're doing stuff, you go, do you know, if I had just done this in that company that I failed in, gee, how successful it would have been. But it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be. If someone wants to reach out to you and connect with yourself, where can they find you? Give us your web address and so on.
Sure, sure. I'm very open to conversations 24/7. And my phone number, let's start with my phone number, 954-774-4141. This is in the US, so you add a 1 at the beginning. My email is claudio.vilas@sunbeltnetwork.com. Wish it was easier. And my website is www.theroofingBizBroker.com. And I focus on roofing, but anybody that has any questions about selling their business, I'm always open to have a conversation, to help somebody, and maybe to show you in the right direction if you need to. But I'm always open to listening and talking with entrepreneurs.
And your LinkedIn profile?
Oh, my Claudio Vilas. I don't know. Just look for Claudio Vilas, roofing business broker or business broker.
Claudio, before we go, what best business advice would you give someone? And what book would you recommend someone to read?
I like many books, but the one that I always go back to is The 7 Habits. I think that is one of the most revealing business, and not only business, but life books that you can read. I love it. And the first rule of the 7 Habits is actually start with the end in mind, which is the advice that I would give to any business owner. Start with the end in mind. Figure out or imagine how you want to end your business. In the book, it says, imagine what you want written on your tombstone and work towards that. This is very similar, although I don't want your business to end up that way. But think of, what you want to achieve and start from there and work backwards. Most people don't do that, and they just go day to day. And if you really don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. So the same book that I use that. And one thing that I would say, and I would like your audience to read, it's not actually a book. It's the Johnson & Johnson against Credo. The J&J Credo was written in about 1940s by Robert Wood Johnson, and it drives the whole company. And it's to me, is poetry of capitalism. It's the most interesting credo I've ever read, and that was way before all these things that we have today. But it has 4 parts. The first part talks about the clients that we serve as a company, whether your company, my company, J&J. It talks about respecting the clients. The second part talks about respecting the employees and the people that work in the company. The third part is about the environment and the people and the communities and the places that we live. And finally, if you do all that correctly, it talks about the shareholders. So basically, and you got to read it because it's extremely well written, and that was way before ChatGPT, and it flows. And that to me is the essence of a capitalism and look at the right way. If you do everything correctly, you should be making money. So it starts from the clients and it ends up with the shareholders. And it's a 2-minute or less read, and it's very inspiring. And that's what drives at least, my moral compass.
I'll definitely have it checked that out myself. And you were right as well that most people go to work and they just get through the day and always start with the end in mind and then reverse engineer it backwards, which I think is crucial. And like, just on the side note, like when we go through companies with their sales process and how they make their sales, all the different components of a sales presentation should show them, if they've done it correctly and done their research correctly, should show them how they should market their company.
Yeah.
Where people think you need to do marketing and then get the sales. Is not the sales process when you check it all, the wants, the needs, the desires, the reasons why people wouldn't buy and everything, and use that for your proper sales. You take that information, you put it into your marketing and your company, then you are speaking the language of people. So that's even reverse engineering, a side note on that. But look, it's been an honor. It's been a great conversation. I've entirely enjoyed it. I think it's been very genuine, and people will get a lot of it. So Claudio, look, thanks for coming on the show.
Joe, it's been a real pleasure. I love talking with you in the past. I love having this conversation, and I hope to continue to have conversations, whether in a podcast or just socially. Even though we're an ocean away, technology can help us do that. Have a virtual coffee every now and then, and just talk about life and things in general.